Williams.
You struck up a friendship with her?
Yeah, I made her as in my goddaughter.
Did you do that or?
Me.
You have any idea where this girl may be?
I wish I know.
Becomes a search for the truth.
He said, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure we find whoever did this.
Felicia Williams' body was discovered floating in Tampa Bay, naked and surrounded by the sharp, tangled mangroves that lined the shoreline. The young girl's body was found by locals who had no idea who they were about to uncover. The sun had long since set on May 17, 2014, when her tiny, pale figure was spotted in the water, bouncing helplessly against the jagged rocks. Hours had passed since anyone had seen her last, but for the family and friends of Felicia, the agony of not knowing would linger much longer. No one could have prepared them for what they were about to face. Felicia, once a vibrant, carefree child known for her bright smile, had been discarded so much. Her life, taken too soon. Her innocence, stolen. But there was one thing that echoed through the silence before her body was found. A phone call. A 911 call placed from Granville Ritchie's phone. It was barely a few seconds long. It was a faint and frantic noise. But could this be her desperate cry for help? The operator tried calling back twice, both times. The call went to voicemail with no answers and no clues. What happened to Felicia Williams that day? Who took her? And why did the people who were supposed to protect her, the ones she trusted, fail her so completely? This is just the beginning, but the truth won't come easily. Lies upon lies, twisted stories, and deceit will cloud the investigation. Justice almost slipped through the cracks due to complications no one saw coming. The real story, as you'll soon learn, is far darker than anyone imagined. Felicia Nicole Williams was born on December 9, 2004, in Tampa, Florida. From the moment she entered the world, she was destined to leave a mark. Felicia's family affectionately called her Sugar Plum, a nickname that stuck because of her sweet, round face and her ability to make anyone who looked at her smile. As a young child, Felicia had a natural zest for life. She was always on the move, exploring the world around her with enthusiasm and joy. She loved riding her bike through the neighborhood, and on peaceful afternoons, you could find her by the pond, feeding the ducks. She was a caring, kind-hearted soul who had a deep love for animals and a sense of responsibility well beyond her years. Her family often recalled how, even at a young age, Felicia would pitch in to help others. She wasn't the type to sit idly by. One of her favorite things to do was visit a local barber shop, where she'd spend time sweeping the floors and taking out the trash to earn a little pocket money. She didn't expect anything in return. It was just who she was. It wasn't unusual for her to show up at the door with little gifts for her family or neighbors, gifts she'd earned through her own good deeds. One of the most cherished memories Felicia's mother shared was of the summer in 2013 when Felicia had to take on extra responsibilities. Felicia's mother had undergone foot surgery, and Felicia stepped up to take care of her. She spent the entire summer cooking for her, helping her get around, and being the kind of child her mother could always count on.
Towards him. He says that he suffered years of emotional and physical abuse, including severe head injuries that caused brain damage at the hands of his father, who was also frequently not home, leaving the defendant, the oldest of 18 siblings, to care and raise them all. Ultimately, the jury would conclude that the mitigating factors were not enough, and Granville Ritchie was sentenced to death. His punishment was deemed just, but it will still never be enough of a price to pay for the life that he took from Felicia Williams.
On December 9th, 2004, at 1:56 p.m., God blessed me with an 8-pound, 1-ounce healthy baby girl who I had the honor of naming Felicia Nicole Williams. But to others, she was known as Sugar Plum. I knew when she was first born that she would be my special child. And that's because she had that drive and will and was always determined to make things happen. I can remember back in June of 2013 when I had my foot surgery. She stayed in the house the whole entire summer, nursing me back to health. And not only did she do that, she also cooked for me, bathed me, and Sugar Plum also at the time of my surgery made sure my baby, who was 2 years old at the time, was well cared for. Even though Felicia was 9 years old, she was very smart, advanced, and very wise beyond her years. Like an elderly person would say, was an old soul.
Felicia's generosity extended beyond her family. One Christmas, she received 3 bikes, 2 from charity donations and 1 from her father. Despite having 3 bikes, Felicia decided to give one of them away to her best friend, simply because she felt it was the right thing to do. Her selflessness didn't come from a place of obligation or expectation. It was just who she was. But there was one person who would alter the course of her life forever. Ebony Wiley had always been a steady presence in Felicia's life, trusted by the family as Felicia's godmother. She had worked as a housekeeper at a local nursing home, where she was well liked for her friendly demeanor and strong work ethic. But beyond her job, Ebony was deeply embedded in Felicia's world. She wasn't just a caretaker or a family friend. She was the person who knew how to make Felicia laugh when she was down, the person who took time out of her day to share moments of joy and love with the young girl. For Felicia's family, Ebony was not only reliable, she was family. The bond they shared was built on years of trust and closeness, and it was a relationship that had become inseparable. Then came the day that would change everything, the day that would alter the course of Felicia's fate. Ebony met Granville Ritchie, though she didn't know his real name at the time. He introduced himself as Trevor, a man who would soon become a central figure in Felicia's tragic story. Their meeting was entirely by chance. It happened one afternoon when Ebony, walking with Felicia's sister, was approached by a man driving a silver Lexus. The car slowed as it approached, and Granville, who was 35 years old, called out to Ebony. What started as a simple conversation quickly turned into an exchange of phone numbers. He was confident, smooth in his words, and seemed to have an easy charm about him that Ebony couldn't resist. At that moment, neither of them knew just how significant this chance encounter would become. Granville, who went by Trevor at the time, was far from the charming stranger Ebony had thought he was. He had a criminal past that he kept hidden. In 2013, Granville had been involved in an assault case with his wife Toadra, which resulted in him being arrested for sexual assault and domestic battery. However, the charges were dropped when his wife retracted her statement, claiming she didn't remember the assault happening. This wasn't the first, nor would it be the last time Granville's violent tendencies would emerge. Granville's charm seemed endless. He began texting Ebony almost immediately, and their conversations quickly moved from casual exchanges to something more serious. Within days, Ebony found herself emotionally invested in this man. They spoke daily, and the more they talked, the deeper the emotional bond grew. Ebony even saved his name in her phone as "my husband," a gesture that reflected just how invested she had become in their budding relationship. May 16, 2014, started as a typical day for Felicia Williams. She had plans to spend the day with her godmother, Ebony Wiley. Ebony called Felicia's mother, Felicia Demerson, asking if her daughter could spend some time with her. Felicia's mother agreed, trusting Ebony completely. At this point, Ebony was like family to them, and Felicia had always adored her godmother. Ebony, along with Granville Ritchie, who was using the alias Trevor, and Felicia went to Checkers for food. The drive was relaxed, and there was nothing in the air to suggest that anything was amiss. After they finished eating, the plan shifted. Granville suggested they head to his apartment in Temple Terrace, a few miles away. Felicia, who had no reason to be concerned, went along with it. Once at Granville's apartment, everything appeared calm. Felicia ate the food they bought and hung around the apartment, while Ebony and Granville spent time together. But things took a disturbing turn when Granville convinced Ebony to leave Felicia alone with him. He asked her to go out and buy drugs, including ecstasy and weed. He told Ebony it would be better for Felicia to stay behind since Ebony didn't have a valid license to drive, and Granville claimed he didn't want to risk taking Felicia with him. At this point, Ebony didn't question his request. She left, trusting that everything would be fine. Felicia was left alone with Granville, a man Ebony had known only for a few days. However, as she drove away, Ebony was unaware that the decision she had just made would change Felicia's life forever. When Ebony returned, she was immediately struck by Granville's odd behavior. He was sweaty, and his shirt was off, which was unusual and unsettling. More troubling, Granville told Ebony that Felicia had gone to CVS to buy candy, but had never returned. He claimed he had given her money and sent her to the store, but Felicia had not come back. Granville's behavior didn't match his story. His strange mannerisms only deepened Ebony's unease. But at that moment, she believed him. She didn't question him further and trusted the story that Felicia had run off. Together, they came to a decision. They would tell Felicia's family that she had run away. Ebony called Felicia's family to report that Felicia was missing. The family was immediately concerned, but it wasn't until they notified the police that the case escalated. Initially, the police treated it as a runaway and a missing person case, but something didn't feel right. On the morning of May 17, 2014, the tranquil waters of Tampa Bay held a horrifying secret. Felicia Williams' body was discovered, floating near the Courtney Campbell Causeway. The discovery came just hours after her disappearance, and the area, usually known for its calm beauty, was now the site of a chilling mystery. The body, naked and bruised, was surrounded by the thick mangroves that lined the shore, their branches brushing against the lifeless form of a young girl. The body was carefully removed from the water, and the medical examiner's report would confirm their worst fears. Felicia had been sexually assaulted, then strangled, and, to add to the brutality of the crime, she had suffered multiple blows to the head. As investigators began to connect the dots, Ebony Wiley's role in the case began to unravel. Her involvement had always been central to the investigation, but now, with Felicia's body found, the truth began to seep out. Under increasing pressure from the authorities, Ebony finally admitted to lying.
I was like, what happened? He was like, man, as soon as you left, she asked me to, do I have candy? I told her no. She was like, well, can you give me $2 to go to the store? I was like, well, how she know it's CVS around here? And he was like, oh no, I told her that she can go to CVS. I sat down, he panicking. And I was like, just calm down. I said, I'm gonna put it in God's hands. He said, those who pray in secretly, he shall reward you openly. He was like, well, go in my mama's room and go and pray. He's like, but you don't gotta go in my room, because my room a little bit junky. Go in my mama's closet.
Then the detective shows Wiley pictures of the apartment to see if she spots anything unusual, and that's when she points out some notable details.
Go and pray. He's like, but you don't gotta go in my room, because my room a little bit junky. Go in my mama's closet.
Then she was also shown pictures of Richie's car, where she noticed something crucial.
Let's see that car.
And the suitcase.
That suitcase was not the best seat of that car when he dropped me off home.
Everything begins to kind of come into focus, because now you know that you've got a suitcase that was used essentially as a conveyance and ultimately as a very, very poor coffin for this child.
As the investigation progressed, more pieces of evidence came to light, pointing directly to Granville Ritchie. Granville's phone records were the first crucial clue. The record showed that he had been near the Courtney Campbell Causeway, the very location where Felicia's body was discovered, at around the same time she was dumped into the water. This was the kind of evidence that couldn't be ignored. Granville had been there, but the evidence didn't stop there. A mangrove leaf was found lodged in the headlight of Granville's car, and when investigators examined the vegetation around the causeway, they found that the leaf matched perfectly. This wasn't just a random piece of debris, it was a clear link to the crime scene. Granville had driven the body to the location, and the evidence was telling a story that he couldn't deny. Next, the GPS data from Granville's phone, combined with sand found in his car's trunk, confirmed his proximity to the crime scene. The sand in his car matched the sand at the location where Felicia's body was found. The pieces were coming together, and it was becoming increasingly impossible for Granville to maintain his innocence. The investigation had reached a crucial point, and the arrest of Granville Ritchie was now imminent. On May 21, 2014, only days after the discovery of Felicia's body, Granville was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, sexual battery, and aggravated child abuse. His arrest was the result of mounting evidence that connected him directly to the crime. At the same time, Ebony Wiley, who had played a significant role in the initial misdirection of the investigation, was also arrested. On May 22, 2014, she was taken into custody for providing false statements to the police. As the case moved forward, the forensic evidence against Granville Ritchie began to mount. DNA found on Felicia's body, cell phone records, and physical evidence, such as the broken suitcase wheel, made it clear that Granville was the murderer. The police found broken suitcase wheels in his apartment that matched the suitcase believed to have been used to transport Felicia's body. They also discovered drag marks on the carpet leading to the patio, where the suitcase was presumably loaded into the trunk of his car.
His hands around her throat. He strangled her. And then he took Felicia's lifeless, nude body and he threw it like someone would throw a bag of garbage into the cold, dark waters of Tampa Bay. Felicia Williams' life meant less to this man than his sexual desires to violate her.
The prosecution tied Ritchie to the crime through forensics, cell phone data, his questionable police interview, and their key witness, Ebony Wiley.
Why is it that you asked Granville, are you responsible? Did you do something to her?
Because she didn't show up. If she walked away, if she done ran down the street, she gonna show up.
Ebony Wiley was an important, if not crucial, witness for the prosecution. She filled in the gaps.
I told them that I lied, and they was like, what you lied?
The situation intensified when Ebony Wiley was called in to testify. In September 2019, after multiple years of delays, Ebony took the stand as a key witness for the prosecution. During her testimony, she finally gave her most honest account of what happened. We would start the clip from where she came back from getting the drugs he sent her so that he could have all the time to commit all his evil intentions.
Did you see the defendant back at the apartment?
Yes, I did.
And where did you see him at?
He was standing outside.
Outside where?
Of his door.
And he was upstairs standing outside of his door?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he look like?
He had no shirt on. He was.
I'm sorry?
He ain't had no shirt on. He looked like he was sweating. Like he was just. And I looked up as I was driving. I looked up. I'm like, damn, what is going on? So I pulled in the drive-through. I went at the parking lot, and I went upstairs. And he was telling me they ain't gotta let her go to the store and she ain't come back yet.
Were you concerned that Felicia was not there and that you could not find her at the CVS?
Yes, I was very concerned.
So what happened next?
That's when that's when he calmed down and I started thinking, I'm like, oh my God, this girl done left and go to the dang on store.
I'm sorry, what was that?
After he done calmed down, that's when I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, dang, she done went to the store and he done let her go to the store. So that's when I was about to start panicking, like, why you let her go to the store? You know, she already ate, you know. And he was like, I don't know. She really wanted some candy. And I was like, I want to pray. And I was like, I need to get in the closet and pray.
So why did you need to go in the closet
Because
and pray?
I was getting ready to panic, knowing that I was high and I was trying to just calm down. And I went in he's like, you go in my mama's room in her closet and pray. And I just stand there, got on my knees and started praying.
How long did you stay in that closet? Do you remember?
Like, no longer than 2.5 minutes.
What was the next thing you then did? Had Felicia returned during that time?
No, she did not.
So what did you do next?
So I came out, he was rolling a blunt, and I took a drink, and he proceeded sexual towards me, and we had sex.
And where is it that you had sex that time?
Right there in the front room floor. Right there in the front room floor.
Was that the room that has the couches in it?
The front room, yes.
Okay. At all, did you and the defendant ever go look for the victim out around the apartment?
No, we did not.
Why didn't you go look for the victim?
I was following his lead. He said, I'm finna drop you off home. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm saying to myself, I'm like, well, dang, we ain't even going to look for the little girl. Like, I'm saying it to myself, but this his car, and I'm not going to say nothing out the way. So I was just like, I waited till he dropped me off, and then I called her sister and see where she was.
Was there a conversation about what you were going to do or what you were going to say about Felicia being missing?
Yes.
Ultimately, you were going to have to tell her family, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what conversation took place with regards to that?
He told me to tell her parents that it wasn't no male in the house, and then he told me that he's telling his mom was in the house, a female in the house.
Okay, so why did that whole conversation happen, and why is he telling you to say that there's no male in the house?
To make me seem like I wasn't no bad person leaving her, and he told her to go to the store.
Was he telling you that you would be viewed as a bad person?
Yes, ma'am.
That if you had left Felicia there with a man, that you would be viewed as the bad person?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you point out to him that he was the one that in fact told you that you needed to leave her with him?
To who?
Did you tell the defendant that?
No.
Okay. So you're just going along with what he's saying?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you weren't going to be allowed to say that there was a man there at the house, what was the story going to be then?
That it was a woman there and she left out the door. I took a shower and she left out the door. That was the lie that I told him.
However, it was Granville Ritchie's phone call that proved to be one of the most pivotal pieces of evidence. On May 16, 2014, at 5:06 p.m., a brief but crucial 911 call was placed from Granville's phone. The call lasted just a few seconds, and investigators theorized that it was Felicia trying to call for help before she was murdered. The call was filled with static, and the operator tried calling the number back twice, but it went to voicemail both times. The silence on the line, combined with the timing of the call, raised suspicion that it was Felicia herself reaching out in desperation. It was a fleeting moment that would later haunt the investigation and fuel the suspicion that Granville Ritchie had trapped and murdered Felicia Williams. However, despite these mounting pieces of evidence, Granville's defense tried to argue his case, claiming that there was insufficient proof to link him directly to the murder. They suggested that no DNA was found on the victim's body that could conclusively tie Granville to the sexual assault. However, the prosecution countered this by arguing that condoms were found among Granville's belongings, and that it was not uncommon in cases of sexual assault for DNA evidence to be absent, especially if a condom was used. But the prosecutors came prepared.
Can you give us a brief overview of the injuries that you opined or that you observed?
I think the most notable thing was the body had multiple superficial injuries. That is, they didn't really go deep in the body, and those are distributed primarily across the front of the face and the chest. There's some lesser injuries, but all of those were post-mortem artifact. That is, they happened after this girl was dead. There were other injuries that were external as well as internal that happened while she was alive. For example, she has some genital injuries. I believe those happened while she was alive. She had some injuries inside her throat that happened while she was alive. She had injuries to her shoulder that happened while she was alive. Injuries to her middle back that happened while she was alive.
Did you observe any injuries about her head?
Yes, there were several bleeds underneath her scalp. Again, those happened while she was alive. She also had some bleeding on the sides of her head that happened while she was alive. Those are associated with the strangulation injuries that I mentioned earlier.
On September 25th, 2019, after a trial that had dragged on for years, Granville Ritchie was convicted of first-degree murder, capital sexual battery, and aggravated child abuse. Then came the sentencing phase. The same jury that convicted him now had to decide if Granville Ritchie should face life in prison or the death penalty. The decision wasn't hard. The brutal nature of his crime, the sexual assault, the way he disposed of Felicia's body as though she were nothing more than garbage, and the fact that he showed no remorse, these were enough. In a unanimous decision, the jury recommended that Granville Ritchie receive the death penalty. The gavel came down, and in that moment, the weight of justice seemed for a fleeting second to land squarely on the side of the victim. Hillsborough Circuit Judge Michelle Sisko confirmed the death penalty sentence on September 11, 2020, saying, "There will be no corporal redemption for you. Your physical being, your person, you will remain incarcerated until the date of your death is scheduled to occur." She spoke with authority, but there was no real solace for those who had suffered the most. The family of Felicia Williams, though they had received justice, could never get their daughter back. Felicia's mother, Felicia Demerson, was left with a pain that no sentence could heal. Standing in front of the court after the sentencing, she spoke of her daughter with the weight of a grief so deep that it could not be quantified. "My baby is gone," she said, her voice breaking, "but justice has been served." Her relief, however, was tempered with sorrow. The loss of Sugar Plum would never fade. Every day without her daughter felt like a lifetime. The pain of Felicia's absence was something no verdict could alleviate, no matter how final.
Felicia loved riding her 3 bikes that she got for Christmas that following year. She liked going to the park and enjoying going to the pond and feeding the ducks. She was a cheerleader. She sang faithfully in the youth choir at the New Zion Holiness Church, where I am a faithful member. She was active with the International Free and Accepted Modern Masons and Order of the Eastern Stars Blue Valley Youth Court, number 203, which has now been renamed in her honor as Blue Valley Felicia Williams Youth Court, number 203. In our church, they honor her by setting a seat aside with a black bow in remembrance of her for 30 days. I could remember the last conversation I had with Sugar Plum on May 16, 2014 at 4 p.m. And she never departed from her mommy without telling me that she loved me. Sugar Plum didn't only touch lives through death, she also touched lives through living. Sugar Plum had her first job at a local barbershop.
The community was similarly devastated. The quiet streets of the Dural Oaks neighborhood, where Felicia had once ridden her bike and played with friends, were now filled with a sorrowful silence. Neighbors who had watched Felicia grow up, who had cheered her on as she performed in church and school, found it hard to look at the same streets without thinking of the little girl they had lost. Kiana Scott, a resident of the same area, spoke about the change in the community after Felicia's murder. "The kids don't play outside anymore," she said. "It's not the same." The impact was especially heavy on Felicia's sisters and her extended family. Shakula, Felicia's older sister, often reflected on the happiness and energy her little sister had brought into their home. But the murder and the years-long legal battle that followed took its toll on all of them. Ebony Wiley, who had played a pivotal role in both the disappearance of Felicia and the subsequent cover-up, was also sentenced. While she wasn't directly involved in the murder, her actions had severely delayed the investigation and misled the police. On December 18, 2020, Ebony was sentenced to 75 days in jail, followed by 5 years of probation. Her role in lying to the police and attempting to cover up what had truly happened to Felicia left her family and Felicia's family with conflicting emotions. Felicia's mother, though relieved by the sentencing, spoke of the bitterness she felt toward Ebony for her role in the tragedy. "She was the reason we're all here," Felicia's mother said. "She should have been honest from the start." Felicia's burial became a symbol of both loss and love. On May 24, 2014, hundreds gathered at the Church of God by faith to honor the life of the young girl who had touched so many hearts. The church dedicated a seat for her with a black bow, a small but poignant tribute to the child who had sung in the youth choir with such passion. As Felicia's flower-covered casket, engraved with the words "Sugar Plum," was drawn by a single black horse under the sunlight, her community could only reflect on the void left in their lives. As for Granville Ritchie, he remained incarcerated on death row, awaiting his fate. The Florida Supreme Court had upheld his death sentence in June 2022, but for Felicia's family, the battle was never truly over. No sentence could bring back their daughter, their sister, or their niece. The emptiness of her absence lingered, despite the justice that had been served. In the end, Felicia Williams may have been gone, but her memory would live on, forever in the hearts of those who loved her, and forever in the hearts of a community forever marked by her absence. So, what do you think about the way this case unfolded? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below,